Rob, we got a special show today. We're joined by David Moss, Devin Olsen, and Spencer. They're going to talk about their Canada coast-to-coast journey. They were supposed to go 3,700 miles, and they ended up going 3,782 miles. So we're going to get into that today because they're here to join us. Before we get started, a huge thank you to KPMG for being the sponsor and making this all possible. Spencer, David, Devin, how was the journey, and where the heck did the additional 82 miles come from?
Great question. The extra 82, I think when we started the journey, we didn't know where we were going to end, like to a pinpoint. We had a good idea that we were going to end in Halifax, but we didn't know we were going to actually end at a Tesla service center or the delivery center there in Halifax. So that changed our route just a little bit. And then also, we had some parking lot navigation where we ended up going around a couple parking lots, maybe a few times extra. That maybe added a couple miles in total. I'd say that between those two things, that made up a good chunk of the missing miles, if that's what we're trying to trace down.
Yeah, we had two particular instances that really went sideways on there. The first one was at the Winnipeg Mall. It took us about 20 minutes of circling the block for eventually the car to find the supercharger. The very first time we get in there, it drives right to the supercharger, perfect navigation, and then it just blows right by it and just kept on going. And then, throughout just like patience, we go up to the second floor of a parking garage and down and around to the other side of the mall. It took forever to figure out. And then another time, I thought they were going to strand me, but I got out of the car to plug it in, and they were going to reroute it. And then the car just ended up like circling the block for a mile or two. We basically told it like normally when you re-put the navigation in, it just picks a new parking spot. It didn't quite get close enough to the charge cable, but it just decided to take off and go on its merry way, and then it came back, and it was really scary because it was the last. If it didn't take that immediate turn, that was the only turn for the next 20-30 miles because we were in the middle of nowhere.
And I think during the rain towards the end of the trip too, we would stop to clean the cameras just to keep them, give us as good of a chance as we had. And the route we took, it's not an interstate like across the U.S. I think that none of us were expecting that. The majority of it is a 2-lane road the whole time, like through the middle of nowhere for most of it. So if you try and get off of the road to stop and clean the cameras or go to the bathroom or do whatever you need to do, to get back on, sometimes it's not a clean route back, and you end up going through dirt, rutted, pothole ridden, looked like Beirut for part of it. And then that makes the cameras dirtier, so then you got to stop again and clean them. So that definitely added some extra miles, I think, towards the end of the trip as well.
When you're in Winnipeg, now I have to ask, because Winnipeg has a musical history, if you had on the Guess Who or Neil Young, do you think it would have found that charger no problem? Said, I got our hometown boys. Do you think it would have found it no problem?
Maybe next time we got to play their music while we go through for like better luck.
It was just the car punishing us for no Tim Hortons in the car.
That's a tragedy. I had a question, just taking a step back, right? You've attempted this before in the United States. What made you think about doing this in Canada? And then as you were going through the trip, this time on a newer version of FSD compared to your cross-country trip in the US, what stood out to you as perhaps things that were different between the two versions as you're making this trip?
Yeah, so all the credit goes to Devin on that one for sparking the idea. I thought it was going to be a one and done idea. Devin reaches out to me to do a similar show that we're doing today, and he brought up the idea on the show, and him and I hit it off so well that I actually considered it, and then followed up with him, and then our third guy here, Mr. Spencer. I think the best part of the whole story is that Mr. Spencer is supposed to be in Galapagos Islands. He's leaving the next day, maybe 2 days later. I call him up on the phone, and somehow I'm quite the negotiator. I didn't know I had it in me, but I talked him out of going to Paradise to fly to Seattle and hang out with two basic strangers for a week. And that's basically how it came about. I knew Devin and I kind of talked, stayed in touch, but we were waiting towards more of the summer, the nicer weather basically, and then it all kind of came together within well under a week.
So Devin, where did this generate for you? It sounds like you were kind of the genesis of this.
Yeah, I mean, like David said, I interviewed him because I have a YouTube channel. Like my thing, I did the drive in the very similar camera setup to this. Like I was using FSD driving, and I drive in Canada all the time here. And he told me about the coast to coast, and so naturally, to me, it just seemed interesting. I was like, well, if you did it in the States, could we do it here in Canada? But truthfully, it was just one of those things where we spitballed the idea, but. I'm born and raised in Canada, but I've never spent much time on the East Coast. I haven't driven through it. So it was kind of just like a lofty goal, and I didn't know what to expect. So we both kind of like gave it some thought, but truthfully, like David said, like a week out, it wasn't before that we had really like put in a lot of like concrete details. So it was more just like pie in the sky. We should do this when FSD gets good enough was also the other thing. Because at the time, I don't know, David, you'll know what version you're on, but version 14 had just come out, so we're like, hey, I guess we can do it, and it worked out.
Yeah, so I think Spencer may be the best to talk about the differences and some of the edge case encounters we talked about. But when I did my coast to coast in America, it was on version 14.2.1.25. That's quite the mouthful, and we were on 14.3.4. And throughout all our testimony, you talk about the flaggers and the.
Yeah, I think we hit far more edge cases than I think we were expecting to hit. Again, we went into this thinking it was going to be kind of interstate the whole way, which generally is not that hard of a drive. But man, with Canada's harsh winters, they only have a few months out of the year where they can really do all the road work. And so now is that time where they're doing all of the road construction. Certainly some areas needed more of it than they were doing, but that really made things complex where you have a 2-lane road and half of it is closed, right? So then you have flaggers. I think the Canadian economy must be propped up by flaggers. Like the amount that we saw the guys and girls just holding the stop signs or the slow signs, that for an autonomous car, just think about it. It's such a challenge because it needs to understand, hey, that's a stop sign. But it's not a normal stop sign. A normal stop sign, you stop and then you can go, right? This stop sign, you need to stop until it doesn't say stop anymore. And so there were several moments where just how tense we were in the car, really just hoping that the sign guy was going to hold it still enough so the car wouldn't, try and skirt around him. But every time the car did it well. I think there was an automated sign or stop sign for some construction, and the car thought it was a stoplight, and so it came up to it stopped for a while, and then it went. It didn't technically have to stop in that situation, but there was no accelerator taps or anything. We just let the car handle it all, and it did it in every situation. Part of it may have been luck, but also the car is really smart in those situations.
Another example with that, we were in Quebec and we went on the stretch of road that was probably upwards of 50 miles long that had absolutely no markings whatsoever. No speed limit signs, no shoulder markings. It was a 2-lane road. It must have just been freshly paved, but an FSD's having it, and it's in the pitch black. It's almost, it's 11 o'clock at night, and there's no markings whatsoever. You thought you were driving in third world country. And then not only the top that, and so the road closes for construction. It takes us on this 45-degree dirt road to get onto the other side of the freeway going westbound. And then so now we're driving on another, unpaved road just with cones, following the cones. And the navigation's freaking out because it thinks, why are you going, east on a westbound road? And then, but the car held it strong. Eventually we got back on another dirt road to get back on the stretch. But yeah, I mean, we came into so many of these things that we never anticipated. Like when I did this America route, it was, basically Interstate 10, Interstate 40, nice, big, beautiful, well-paved roads we, come to take for granted. And it was not like that at all. Even
parking the superchargers is something that, again, I think people in the United States don't think about it, but like a lot of our superchargers are in like dirt parking lots where So the car's backing up, has no lines, has no reference, and it drives like through a dirt parking lot, and then will like knows or back itself up perfectly to a charger. And there's a few where we took a photo to say where we were, and people are like, I don't even understand how FSD would have done that, because there's no like visual reference for it to have like navigated and backed in as well as it did. But it was truly impressive how well it did in a bunch of those scenarios.
Devin, that's a valid point, because you gentlemen know there's this debate around lines, and what you accomplished in Canada and what I've seen with my own personal Tesla, lines matter less and less. Did you go into this cross-country journey thinking about lines and how important they were, or did you just have this full confidence in the AI4 hardware?
For all the mistakes that this car makes, and it does have like little quirks here and there, it's so rare that the car ever does something that feels unsafe. So I don't worry about like lane lines or anything like that, because I feel like whatever the brain is and how it understands the world, it does so in a way that like it feels safe. So I don't worry about lane markings. I don't really worry about like, even if there's no speed limit, it's going to pick up context on how fast it should be going for the most part. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't see that it's 80. And if it misreads a 30, but sees the rest of the cars going 80, it will go those speeds. So truly the car is just so like aware of its surroundings with and without proper lane markings, whatever, that I don't worry about it because it does so well. It doesn't make me ever feel unsafe day to day. So I didn't worry about it for our drive.
You mentioned a few times having to clean the cameras. Was that your choice, like out of an abundance of caution, or did you feel like you were getting signals that there was a certain degradation happening? I'm just curious, as I think about, the advancements that we've seen and I've experienced in FSD. One of the issues we talk about in moving from FSD to level 4 self-driving is the concern around camera occlusion due to buildup of dirt or mud or snow or whatever. So walk us through that. Like, what was your thinking behind it? Was it proactive because you just wanted to be careful? Was it necessary? All that?
Yeah, great question. And certainly we share some of the same concerns and sentiment around, is this hardware enough as it sits in our cars today? You compare that to Robotaxi with the camera washers. That is an obvious hardware difference. And it's clear there's a reason why they have those camera washers. And I think we learned that on the trip as well, which is the first, 3 days, perfect weather. We had no issues at all. We were still cleaning the cameras out of an abundance of caution more than anything else. Hey, we're at the supercharger. Let's wipe them down real quick. Let's clean the windshield just so, we can look out and take pictures better. Let's clean the cameras while we're at it. But the last, day and a half, 2 days, the weather turned south on us and we started getting a lot of rain, and the roads were quite dirty as well. So that was kicking up a lot of dirt onto the cameras. And so we did start getting the kind of camera occlusion or occluded messages for some of the cameras. And at one point, we were very fortunate where it happened that we did get the red hands, saying take over immediately. We were fortunate that it happened. We weren't on the main highway. We were actually about to pull into a supercharger. So we were able to restart FSD.
You were less than 50 feet away.
Yeah, we were at the supercharger when it happened, when the system, threw the red hands and said take over. Fortunately, we were already at a place where we could just restart FSD, continue down the road. But at that point, the navigation already thought we made it to the supercharger. So we ended up skipping it, got another set of the takeover immediately, red hands, red steering wheel, whatever you want to call it. And then at that point, we were already on like a little dirt road. So we were able to stop, actually clean the cameras, start FSD, and then take us actually to the supercharger. And then after that point, continuing on in the rain, we were stopping every, I don't know, in some cases every like 15 minutes, I'd say, sometimes less than that, just to try and keep the cameras clean. Because we didn't want it to happen again, particularly if we were on the highway or the main thoroughfare.
I think we just got scared towards the end. Yeah. more than anything. We had all these close calls, where we had to, to clean, and it was able to, safely pull over on its own accord for us to, nothing safety related. But if this kind of thing happened on the freeway, our, 4 almost 5 days of work would have been for nothing. So, but fortunately, it all worked out in the end.
And I think just to add to that, our abundance of caution towards the end, after we got the initial set of red hands, led to maybe more edge cases that we were running into in terms of, hey, let's stop and clean the cameras again. And then that takes us off of the road. And then we end up on these dirt back roads that are muddy and pothole ridden. And then the car's maybe going a little bit too quick. So we're trying to drop a pin to slow it down. We had to get really creative in the end. But going back to your initial question, which is how are the cameras? How is the AI4? That is certainly going to be something they're going to have to consider in their operational domain if they do allow this on the consumer cars, which is it's probably going to have to be decent weather. The cameras are going to have to be clean. And if they're not clean, they're going to need to figure out how that's going to work. And I think everybody has that same sentiment, like how is it going to work? How are they going to figure that out if they're going to use the current hardware for consumer vehicles with unsupervised or some sort of level 3 or beyond?
I think for me, this road trip showed that FSD is an incredibly, incredibly good, and I hate kind of using the level system because I think it's archaic, but it's an incredibly good level 2 system. Probably the best that one could ever be without being level 3. And if it gets treated like that and gets that sort of expectation going in, like there's going to be moments that you might have to take over and you might have to clean the camera. But if you're sitting in the driver's seat, none of those things are scary because the things that it's doing aren't scary. It's just going to say, hey, the cameras are dirty. Do you want to drive for a minute? And once things are good, let's clean them and take over. If you're treating it as a level 2 system, everything that happened on our drive can't be taken out of context to be this like big bad thing. Cause it's like, yeah, it's a level, like you take over. The problem is where they're trying, like people want this to be level 3 and to be unsupervised. And I'm the biggest FSD fan in the world, but I just don't see that happening with the current hardware today. I think Robotaxi is going to be the golden example of what has to exist for these cars to be unsupervised. Short of rivaling what Mercedes had, where like under very specific circumstances with like good weather, like I don't think you need a lead car, but like certain scenarios you could do unsupervised where you're like in the driver's seat, but like maybe you could be on your phone. I think that's as far as we'll ever get with the current hardware on the consumer cars today is my like, I know everybody doesn't like to hear it. That's just my thoughts.
Devin, your thought, is it AI 5, AI 6? Is it a new revolutionary cleaning system? I'm putting you on the spot here, buddy. What do you think it's going to take?
Honestly, like, I don't know. I feel like nowadays, so few of the big problems are related to the brain, but then that's to the parking as the brain. I think an AI 5 computer with updated hardware, just literally self-cleaning cameras, could probably be good enough. Like, if there was just some level of redundancy on the cameras, because right now, if something happens and the car is blinded, it doesn't really know how to handle itself well, and it can't clean itself. I think this brain with cameras that clean themselves could be unsupervised. I don't think this brain AI4 with even better cameras could be like send my car to the airport to pick up my wife. I think that's even if they call it AI4 Plus or whatever they're calling it now, and slightly different cameras will be required for that. It's so messy. Like I hate and I'm not saying I hate this because you asked me the question. I hate the idea of like giving expectations that may not be met, because then people get disappointed, and it's really too bad because like you see people are disappointed where we are today with FSD. I think FSD is mind-numbingly good. I think it's incredible. Like I said, I think it's the best consumer ADAS on the market, but because it's not what Elon promised in 20 whatever, people will discredit it all day. And it's like, I wish that people could just see it is what it is today, and what it will be in the future, it's to be seen, because so much changes with hardware and with just technology. Like no one could have predicted end to end when we were just doing like hand coding these systems, and now it's so different. So
this could go to all of you gentlemen. Tesla hosted me a few months ago at Giga. I've walked the Cybercab line. Rob has walked it as well, and got to see a teardown. And I've noticed that they had an air cleaner and a liquid cleaner. Based on your experience going coast to coast in Canada, would you say it has to be a combination of air plus liquid, or does it have to be some sort of heating element? What would you think from a cleaning layer would be that ultimate layer? So if you were to go coast to coast again, perhaps this time you go from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, you go backwards, you go the opposite way. What do you think that ideal thing would be where you'd avoid those situations around cleaning?
Obviously, LiDAR. Had to throw it out there. No, I do think you touched on the 3, right? Which is, the liquid cleaning, like having some jets, just like we see on unsupervised robotaxi. Like it's clear that they know that, or their patents where it's kind of like the lizard eye, like it cleans itself. I don't know how that works long term, like the maintenance of that, but something with liquid to clean off the mud and the dried on, caked on dirt. And then to your point, I hadn't even really thought about the air jets. Like that could absolutely be beneficial, and maybe it's a combination of squirt it with the alcohol or the water, and then hit it with the air to clean off any beads of water that are left. I think that could be a potent approach. And then the heaters, we see them in the cars right now, and the car sitting in my driveway, it has some of the heaters on it, and that certainly helps in some situations, but in others it almost makes it worse, right? Because then you're drying on the salt or whatever is caked on the car, and then you're gonna have to go wipe it down. So I think a combination of the three would be helpful, certainly. I don't know what you guys are thinking.
I agree with you completely. In those bad situations, but I think like day in and day out, and they're in 3 cities in Texas. They're probably not actively cleaning them all that often. It's nice sunny days most of the time. I feel like these conversations only happen in bad weather, or it seems like in the Tesla community, and only these really spark up in the winter. But now that we're in the summer, it's not quite the issue. 24/7.
Right. Yeah, and the thing that strikes me is, right, we spent some time on one area that can potentially use some improvement as it goes forward, right, in terms of camera. But what strikes me from your ride that I was like kind of amazed by is both what we talked about a little bit, which was the parking and navigating in those kind of tight, confined, gravel, loosely, defined areas, as well as what you talked about earlier in terms of the quality of the roads, having to go through kind of what seems like unpaved roads many times. As you guys are so experienced with this technology, am I crazy to think that that's impressive stuff? Like that to me seems very impressive. The couple of things that you've mentioned, I've worked for other companies that were affiliated with some of the other American OEMs, and I'm like, there is no way. I know that technology in and out. There's no way they would handle any of that stuff. So, like, give me a sense of like, were there things in here that even as experienced FSD users, you're like, wow, that was impressive?
Devin, you want to take that?
I think the big thing that's like impressing me now is like the reaction time and the ability for it to like, we talk about flaggers, we talk about it driving on the wrong side of the road, and a lot of that is like picking up context to the world. But like while that's all happening, we're then driving through construction, and like a coyote or whatever it was walked out onto the highway, and like faster than any of us and before any of us saw it, the car is like instantly reacting to that, slowing down. And truthfully, that's what's impressing me now is like you always heard that like computers can think faster than a person, but truthfully, version 12, like old versions of FSD, I would like, as you come up to stop cars, you'd be like, we should be slowing down. And it felt like I could think about the thing that I wanted the car to do, and then maybe a second or two later start to do it. We're well past that now. The car makes decisions faster than I can like see and deal with them. And while you're driving on a road trip and a car does something and you have to kind of like look around and be like, why? And you're like, oh, because like, an animal, a person's coming behind me, and it's dealing with the world in 360 degrees faster than you can process it.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say going back to your question, extremely impressive what it can do. There's so many things. I was happy to try it, but I didn't really think we were going to be successful in what we were doing. I had more confidence in the USA. I'd research it and that. It even surprised us 10 times further than, the bad situation we thought we were in. But it did so many things that, need to be talked about, like you said, that are, that it's come so far in such a short amount of time that it doesn't be, and, I've said on other shows like this that it's almost a disservice for them to keep the same name and the same advertising just because it's a completely different thing than it was 6 months ago. They almost need I don't know what they would call it, but it's hard to change the name for what it is, but it's a completely different product, completely different experience. And, if you tried it once in the past and you haven't tried version 14.3 now, you really need to go out to your local showroom and give it a go, because it really could change your world like it has changed mine.
And I think just to add, or maybe even reframe, where we are with this, we spent 4 days and 21 hours together or something like that. And the vast majority of the time was us having these exact conversations as the car's driving us through the whole country of Canada. Like, it's amazing. We were just it felt like we were in a living room, just kind of being teleported across the country, eating snacks, doing live streams, like just having a ball. And that whole time, the car's driving us. Like, I think it's great that we're nitpicking the, very small places where we do see some room for improvement. But in general, the car did phenomenal across, 99% or somewhere in that ballpark of it carried us literally across the whole country, and it did phenomenal. Never felt unsafe during that whole trip.
Didn't even drive an inch.
Yeah, no inch was driven by the three of us. Or anyone else, for that matter.
No Optimus surprise appearance? We didn't have an Optimus surprise appearance?
Was there an Optimus at the service center? No. I was hoping maybe there was one at the end, but no, not even Optimus made it.
You're going on this massive stretch, 3,700 miles, I have to ask. Fatigue. Obviously, it's a supervised system. Did fatigue set in at all as you're looking to set this record?
I would say it comes for sure, but it comes a lot later on than if you were to manually drive that amount of distance. Even take the electric part of it too. That adds a little bit of time compared to traditionally all of us growing up just doing these road trips in a gas car. But I've always driven long distances, tens of thousands of miles, close to 50,000 miles a year, and using FSD now, I can really hit 1,000 miles in a day, no problem. I just by myself, and I never could do that before. At least 30%, maybe 50% further I can go with the same level of energy. What would you say about it?
Yeah, I would certainly say fatigue was a lot less than even I was expecting. It's a long way. Not to say by the end we were ready to run it back again. But certainly we were able to go a lot further in any given day. And I think a large part of that is FSD, right? Taking a lot of the mental load off. Another aspect is it's three nerd dudes just getting to chat for the first time. David and I, we had met previously and done some testing, but Devin was just a YouTube figure for us, right? So getting to meet and chat and learn about each other's lives, that certainly helped to pass the time. But even in a Model 3, which is not a large car, it was surprisingly comfortable, even in the back seat. I think I was worried about that. I even brought like a kind of a butt pillow because I have a tailbone injury, and I was worried, is sitting in the back seat of this car gonna hurt? Totally fine. Didn't even have to pull out the pillow. So it was great. I don't know, Devin, if you have any thoughts on like fatigue of the whole trip.
I think a lot of the fatigue on the trip came from the fact that we were having to be like on, because we were doing live streams, posting on X. And then the thing that was obviously like incredible, but became like tough at the end, is as it was getting more and more like traction online, every single time we'd get to a supercharger, which should be your moment of like, you got to get out, stretch your legs and relax. There was groups of people there, which was like amazing. There was like, 5, 10, 15 people, like huge groups of people. And then of course you want to like spend as much time as you can with them, but then you don't get a moment to like breathe. So, we drove across the country and we did it very quickly, and I was tired, but I think the majority of that came from the visiting. I don't think any of that came from the driving, whereas that wouldn't be the case if we were driving manually.
Yeah, absolutely.
The community support that you guys received, amazing. Definitely, I thought that was great. I thought the live streaming was great. All the folks that were kind of engaging both with you online and then in person. How does that feel? That's got to be a great feeling that you've got all these kind of folks cheering you on, not only because they love the technology you're using, but also they've come to feel like they know you and are supportive of what you're doing. I think it's great. So if you want to give a shout out to all those folks, please do, because I think that was, for me, it was really cool to see that community come out and be so vibrant.
Yeah, to the folks who are listening to this, who came out and supported us either in person or in the comments or the live streams, thank you so much. That was by far the coolest aspect of the trip. Like, yes, it's cool. We went across the country in a car autonomously, but honestly, meeting people from online, like that is so cool. And even explaining that to friends and family who don't really understand the kind of community that we have. It's like people came out at midnight to superchargers in the cold rain.
We had these three gentlemen in Quebec. It's literally midnight, and they come there, and it's pouring down, dumping rain. They come to see us, and this elderly gentleman, he comes and he brings us maple syrup from his own farm nearby.
His own maple trees. What a flex that is. He has, what, 2,500 maple trees?
Yeah, and he gave us these cans of his own maple syrup, and we had one gentleman drive 4 hours to come see us and gave us a whole bunch of Canadian goodies, snacks, and flags, and little trinkets and stuff. I mean, it was just incredible. I mean, it was one of the most interesting weeks of my life by far. I mean, it was just so cool. Every stop was was better than the next, and it was it was a little overwhelming, but incredibly exciting all in one. And then at the end, we have nice words from Ashok, the head of Tesla AI, and these people that we all look up to, that say nice things, and I mean more of the community outreach when we're done, and Tesla Direct reaching out to Devin to set up this endpoint for us to actually be hosted at their center, and I mean it all truly meant so much, a memory for a lifetime.
I would summarize it this way: is that you gentlemen, like, we're in a band, you're on tour, and individuals are coming up to see you, and it's a great feeling. And Spencer, you said running back, I got to stay in the Canada theme. You're going to run it back to Saskatoon, so I'm staying there with the Canada theme with the Guess Who and staying on music. And so, David, you know this. I took the data that Omar, thanks Omar, hi Omar, that gave us the tracker, and I ran it through the AI algorithm that Rob and I created, Omega. And I want to read you the takes of why it matters. I'm going to get into the risks to point out. I'd love for you guys to get your payback on this. So one of the whys it matters that the Omega algorithm came back with and said, the successful completion of a nearly 4,000-mile journey across the diverse Canadian terrain provides a highly public stress test for Tesla's end-to-end neural network. By navigating complex environments from the Rocky Mountains to the Canadian Shield without a single driving disengagement, FSD 14.3.3 demonstrates significant operational maturity. The ability to handle supercharger parking and constructor zones autonomously validates the generalized capabilities of the AI4 hardware suite in unmapped territories. That's what the AI says. You gentlemen experienced it. What do you think?
I love that AI. That's my new favorite AI. I think that's the best way I've ever heard explained it.
Rob, we did something right, sir. We did it right.
It's about time.
All right. You want to do the next one? Want me to do the next why it matters, or you want me to take it?
Sure, I'll take it. So Omega points out another reason why it found this so validating and interesting. It says, this event reinforces the strategic divergence between Tesla's generalized vision-only approach and the geofence sensor-heavy models of competitors. Notably, David Moss understands achieving this milestone using a system that deliberately rejects LiDAR. Tesla is successfully leveraging its consumer fleet to crowdsource edge case validation at scale that traditional OEMs and other operators cannot currently replicate.
I mean, I think that's another one that's beautifully well said, and David Moss is now team anti-LiDAR, and I don't know if you heard the news, you guys, but I quit my job recently and not in the LiDAR game anymore, and so we're full steam ahead on vision only.
Big LiDAR's in shambles right now after they lost their salesman.
I love the classification of big LiDAR. I'm going to have to use that going on. That's great.
I will say, like, on our drive, and this is something on all my experience with full self-driving, like, there's so rarely a moment that I'm like, oh, if there was LiDAR, this would have been different. Like, it's almost always like the issues that come up are, the brain and and I say how good the brain is and how smart AI4 is, but like, it's very rarely a sensor problem, unless it's like sensor, like camera cleaning. But like, other than like parking very close to things, because vision only does have, it can't get that millimeter accuracy. There's so few times that I'm like, oh, if we had LiDAR, this would have been easier. Like that was never a struggle and a reason for me to be like, if we had on this coast to coast trip, it would have been different.
And I think going back to the end of that analysis that you're reading there, Rob, is, the fleet feeding back the data is so important. But then also you look, I think just yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today, somebody found an edge case where like a gas can fell off of a lawnmower truck and the car hit it, which I was kind of surprised to see that. But literally within the first hour of that being posted, Yunta, one of the lead engineers on the Tesla AI team, said he had already forwarded it over. Like, that's amazing that they even have a pipeline that can accept video from a tweet, or at least be able to find what car did that come from to pull the clips. Like, I have no idea how they're going to train on that, but at least that they're acknowledging this is an edge case. Hey, you got it. Let's capture it and train on it. I think that's phenomenal that they are continuing to do that, whether that be from disengaging in the car and reporting the feedback there, or even posting about it online. And I think that's a big reason why the three of us post FSD clips, good and bad, online, is to help improve the system. That's all we want to see, is get better, safer. There's so much benefit that we can see from this system, and it's only going to get better as they continue to train and improve on it.
It's only getting better. I remember some of the later 12 versions, and then we went to 13, and then to me, one of the big breakthroughs recently was 13.2.9 was a big technical breakthrough, which I noticed things. And then 14, it just keeps getting better and better, and it's truly amazing that you're right. They have that direct feedback channel to the engineers that are building the technology, and they're the only OEM that I'm aware of that has that direct feedback. It's actually taking the feedback from the community, engaging with the community, and building it, which brings us to our third why it matters from the Omega algorithm here. And this one, you gentlemen touched on a lot today, and the algorithm, before we even talked to you, picked up on this one. The nuances of the trip expose the physical bottlenecks of a camera-only architecture. The requirement for human occupants to manually clean blinded cameras in bad weather and intervene via navigation pin drops illustrate the hard limits of a level 2 supervised system. As Tesla pushes forward towards aggressive fleet scaling, anticipated FSD supervision version 15, these environmental vulnerabilities remain the primary technical and regulatory hurdles preventing the transition to unsupervised level 4 operations. What do you gents think?
We're both tapping each other to take it. But no, I agree with the sentiment, right? Like, a lot of the conversation, even online, is around intelligence, right? Like, if it was just a little bit smarter, it would figure out this situation. And I think that does solve the majority of the kind of remaining edge cases. A lot of that is on the navigation side. And it seems like Tesla's taking the approach, maybe the harder approach, but maybe it's the right long-term approach, which is the car needs to be smart enough to figure this out with or without the navigation, right? Like, the navigation is one input, but it needs to consider everything to figure out how to get to where it needs to go. Sure, they could invest a lot more in updating navigation and to get David's driveway figured out and mapped perfectly, right? So he makes better videos, but it really does seem like they're taking the longer and harder approach of the car needs to be smarter. Just like you or I would look at Google Maps and say, no, I'm not taking a left there. I'm going to go around the block, or I'm going to pull in this entry instead of that one. The car needs to do that. And I think that's the approach they're trying to take and to train on. And they're learning a lot with this reasoning that they've added recently, for better or for worse. I hope that we only see it improve, but I think we are approaching what is the limit of AI4 and the compute on board. When this system was designed several years ago, probably closer to 5 years ago now, I don't think they knew the model was going to be where it is right now in terms of how it's having to reason and approach certain scenarios. I don't think they had that planned. And so is the hardware reaching its limit? I don't know. They've told us that it's going to be enough. We'll see, I guess, in the long term. But that's my initial thought, is it is an intelligence problem, and it sounds like they're taking the harder but maybe correct approach of the car needs to figure it out with or without the navigation.
I'd say the same thing. I think they're going for the long-term approach in all things navigation. One thing that he it made me think in my mind when he's saying that is on version 14 they took away the max speed. The car needs to figure out the appropriate speed to go. It needs to know the situation It needs to go slower in the winter or maintain traffic in the summer, regardless of the speed limit. All input is any input is bad. It should be able to do it all on its own, and they're going for the long home run. There's going to be some short-term pains that we all experience, but I think it's going to end up in a better result in the long term because of it.
Devin, when you were on the journey with the team, did you run into any monsoon type heavy rain during the journey?
I wouldn't say it's monsoon. Like the rain that we got towards the end was more. It was moderate rain. It was truthfully because we were just trying to be so purist and we were sticking to the standard profile at the time. And we were worried about camera occlusions is why it became even close to the problem that it was. The car slowed down appropriately. And like if we would have put it in chill or sloth, we would have been even better off. But initially we were trying to stay in standard. But the car did do a good job in the sense that like it recognized that it was raining. And then, if the speed limit was 110, it said like, hey, I got to go. I'm actually going to lower my max speed to 105. So there was like definitely a level of intelligence there that was good to see. There was times that even at 105, we were still the fastest car on the road. So I do want to see a little bit more like care and attention to like snow and rain in the future. Like I think the self-driving autonomy, I've said this for the longest time. I don't think the self-driving car should be the fastest car on the road. I think it should be the car most of the times driving the most appropriately safe for the conditions. So Mad Max people are just like in shambles right now hearing me say this, but like I don't think the car on FSD should be like whizzing between lanes, especially not when it's raining and anything close to inclement weather.
I'm shaking right now, Devin. You got me tripping with Mad Max. No. Yeah, I totally agree with what Devin said in terms of, there were a few moments in the rain where we ended up taking it out of standard and putting it into chill. I don't remember if we went down to sloth at all at any point, but just out of an abundance of caution, we didn't want to risk it. Last thing you want to do is hydroplane, and that's the reason why you ended a 3,000 plus mile streak. I'd rather take the non-purist approach and bump the speed limit down or the speed profile down a little bit. In some ways, though, the behavior right now in harsher conditions does seem somewhat deterministic in terms of the car recognizes it's in this situation and it drops the speed to a set amount. Like it doesn't feel like the rest of the AI where it's very dynamic and adapting all the time. It feels very set in these certain routes. And I would imagine that they're going to improve that. I think this past winter with version 14 was the first version where we really saw FSD take some of these adverse conditions, the icy roads, the snow, and that was the first time that I at least felt that, hey, wow, they're really starting to handle some of these farther out weather edge cases, and the car's handling it phenomenally well. That having the traction control and the feedback, their closed ecosystem that Tesla is, that they have everything talking to everything, really helps them in that regard. And I'd imagine they're going to incorporate more of that car's feedback into the model for self-driving as we go forward into version 15 or whatever they're going to call the next versions.
Devin, since you're based in Canada, you get a lot of snow. You're in British Columbia, so two questions for you. One, have you ever taken the vehicle up to Whistler on that famous drive, and have you done it in the snow with FSD?
Yeah, I've taken it to Whistler. I've done snow drives with FSD. Truthfully, this year we didn't get a lot of snow, so I didn't get to test it much in version 14. But like, I think there's different opinions. I see some people, like I personally don't blindly trust full self-driving today in the snow the same way that I do on a clear day and in the rain. So I think it's way better. I think version 13 to 14, there's like a massive difference. It is much more aware and does do a better job, but I've still seen plenty of videos where the car is not driving appropriately, doesn't quite understand ice and snow the way that like a human would. So from my experience, it's moving in the right direction. I would take an abundance of caution in the winter still with FSD version 14.
That's a great segue. So we also have our algorithm is programmed to identify risks. So we'll start with this risk. Get your take on it. Edge case failures in remote Canadian terrain, wildlife, unmarked roads, extreme weather generate a high-profile incident that forces a regulatory pause in Canada. Did you see any extreme edge cases that could cause a regulatory action there?
For me personally, no. Like I think used properly, FSD is safer than a human driver. We should be pushing for this to be the norm and demystifying everything about it and trying to like these headlines that, full self-driving slams into a car or a building and kills somebody. Like those are horrible things and super sad, but almost always, if you look at the root cause, a human is going to be to blame for it. I think you look out when you're on these drives, human drivers are the regulatory nightmare. They should be removed from the road, not FSD. So there's no reason that I think that I saw that FSD did anything that was like outright dangerous.
FSD doesn't text and drive. It doesn't, eat breakfast and drive. It doesn't drink and drive. We're all absolutely terrible manual drivers, and autonomy is what we really need to keep our roads safe.
I get worried about you, David. From sometimes you take Delta somewhere and you post in a rental car lot, I got to drive manually. I get worried about you. How do you go from thousands upon thousands of miles in FSD to, oh boy, I got to touch the wheel? I mean, I thought your wheel had cobwebs.
No, I mean, today I have a Jeep Wrangler, and I drove from Houston here to Dallas, and it was an absolute nightmare. It was one of the worst days of my life. You're making up seeing you, Grayson, but no, I mean, it's the ultimate pain. I grew up loving cars, loving driving, doing everything, and now to even drive an inch, let alone 4 hours today, I just I can't take it any longer. I don't know how anybody does it. It's sickening.
Rob, Omega's got some great takes based on the data set. You want to break them down here for us?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think thank you again for coming on and talking with us and sharing all the data and things like that. So the first take that Omega has is Tesla's mapless vision-only architecture has achieved a level of generalized spatial navigation that legacy ADAS systems cannot match, effectively solving the vast majority of highway and marked and unmarked road driving. Yet the remaining fraction of edge cases, as we've talked about, weather degradation, remains a hard physical bottleneck that software alone has not yet overcome without human supervision. I think I think we would all agree that's pretty much a good summary of what we've talked about. A lot of great things happening, maybe a few things that can improve on. Maybe they were able to do that through compute architecture or as you talked about, adding some sensors to the vehicle in terms of cleaning and things like that. But for an ADAS system, it's miles ahead of everybody else. That I think is the short summary of it. And to Devin's point, if people treat it appropriately as a level 2 system, even though he hates that term, it performs really, really well. And Spencer and Devin and David, as you were just mentioning, can have some really positive effects on the overall driving environment out there and keep people safer.
Well, here, I'll bring up the next take. And Devin, I'd love to get your comment on this one, sir, because this is almost written for you, even though you haven't seen what Omega has written. Competitors and regulators must recognize that Tesla is successfully crowdsourcing the validation of its generalized AI model at a scale no other OEM can replicate. While this cross-country data does not prove level 4 robotaxi readiness, it clearly cements Tesla's dominance in the premium ADAS market and sets a new consumer expectation for automated highway cruising that traditional automakers will struggle to meet. What do you think about that one? I mean, you guys put the miles on.
I would certainly agree, right? Like their approach has, for the better part of a decade or close to a decade now, there was so many naysayers, particularly early on. Maybe just in the last year or 2 years has the general market, I think, come to their senses that, hey, maybe Tesla's approach is going to work and is the right approach, particularly in mass for a huge fleet. I think they're starting to prove that. The challenge is no one has reached widespread, unsupervised anywhere in the world, right? No one's done it. Like Tesla hasn't done it. They're the closest ones, but it's still certainly a supervised system. If there was a cybercab in my driveway right now, it would probably not be a great experience, right? I can't get it to go through a drive-through. I can't get it to park on the right-hand side of my driveway. Like I can't tell it at my work's parking garage, I need to go to the second floor to this exact spot, right? There's still these edge cases that prove it's not ready for unsupervised across the board. Now, does that mean we can't hit something closer to like a level 3 where you're in the driver's seat, you can scroll on your phone or do whatever you want to do, and then be prepared to take over at some point? Will we see that approach? Not sure. But generally, I do think that their approach has proven to be the most successful so far. And now you're starting to see other manufacturers and companies, particularly in the space of China, start to adopt some similar approaches and techniques.
Hey, Rob, you want to take the last Omega's take here? Because what Spencer just said, again, he has not seen this. What the AI wrote is pretty aligned with what he just said.
We have, from Omega, competitors and regulators must recognize that while this cross-country journey does not prove level 4 robotaxi readiness, it establishes a dominant consumer benchmark for premium ADAS capabilities. Traditional automakers will struggle to match this level of automated highway cruising and parking. This gives Tesla a distinct narrative and data collection advantage as it attempts to bridge the remaining gap to unsupervised autonomy.
What do you guys think?
I think that was another one well said. I mean, you've been the star of the show this episode, Spencer. I think you should take it yet again.
Yeah, and to be transparent, as you mentioned, like I haven't seen the questions in advance, but I do think it goes to show that Omega and us are thinking along the same lines in terms of some of the limits and some of the growth opportunities that they still have. It's one of those, I don't know what this looks like in 6 months. Are we really so close that we're about to get some level of unsupervised in our car, or level 3, or I'm in Texas? I think that from a regulatory standpoint probably has the best chance of me getting something in my own car, at least right now. But does that mean I need the front bumper camera? Does that mean that I'm going to have some sort of retrofit for camera washers? What does that look? There's so many unknowns, right? What does this look like in 6 months or a year from now? I don't know. If you would have asked me the same thing 6 months ago, I would have hoped that it was already widespread robotaxis across all of Texas. And yet, David and I here in a little bit, we're going to have to drive an hour into Dallas to go get a robotaxi. Hope that we get one of the few that's going to be operating right now. We don't know. And again, it goes back to no one's done it before. This is an incredibly hard problem to solve. And it's not even a completely solvable problem. That's another thing. People think once we hit unsupervised, that's it, right? Like they're done. No, there's going to be more edge cases. It's just going to get safe enough to the point where we accept FSD or unsupervised is safer than most humans. And at that point, it'll just continue to get better. At least that's my hope. So Omega, I think you got it right. I'm glad that we're in agreement on that. I don't even know if I can spell Omega, but I do think that it's great that we're thinking along the same lines. I don't know if Devin.
I think that was beautifully said.
Yeah. No, well said. And look, guys, I run in the same problem. I take 20 minutes to explain something, and Omega puts it together in 4 lines way better than I ever could. So, but is there something, before we go and let you go, anything that you guys want to share that we didn't cover about your experience, whether it's personal, with the technology, anything else, anything that we missed asking you that you want to get out there?
Anything that you do over again, or anything? What are your thoughts, Devin?
My thoughts are like, I really don't know what it's going to take. And I hope, we talk about 6 months, a year from now. I hope, even if it's not perfect, I hope full self-driving becomes more mainstream, because you look at the adoption rate, it's like strangely low. I don't know if that's the $99 a month price gap or whatever, but like after using it, spending the time with it that we have, it, like we've been pretty clear, it's not perfect, but it's not unsafe. And I really don't know what holds people back. I think people think they love driving, and until you don't drive and understand how much like mental and physical strain that removes from you to like allow the machine to do most of it. I don't know. I just know like that's why I started a YouTube channel, is because I was like, this is so cool. Everybody needs to see it. And it's just really hard to get people that aren't in the little bubble to understand it. So I hope that changes soon. I don't know how.
I would say to the listeners and viewers that are curious, if you want to try and go cross country, I wish you luck, but I would say just go to your local showroom or call a friend and experience the technology. Rob and I have been doing this for decades, and there's a lot of hesitancy the first time a person goes into a Tesla or goes into a robotaxi, is that I would say go experience the technology, because it goes from, oh, I'm scared to, okay, cool, nope, I'm bored. Okay, when you hit the board, yes, mission accomplished. Because this technology is going to have a profound positive effect on society. And I talk a lot about this, if you look at an elderly individual that the eyesight's going, perhaps they're not as mobile, their reflexes aren't there. Well, today FSD can get them there, and tomorrow robotaxi can get them there. The path for them to continue to live a very healthy, prosperous life with a strong mental ability is there because of autonomy. And each and every week, Rob and I will be here breaking down the signals. This was a special episode this week with this wonderful team that went 3,700 plus miles across Canada. And I had to get the Canadian music references in there. And then next week, Rob and I will be back here breaking down the signals in the markets. And if you need more to learn more about Omega, please send an email to alpha@autnmy.ai. That's alpha@autnmy. And also, Rob and I are here for advisory services, so reach out to us. The future is bright, the future is autonomous, the future is FSD. Spencer, David, Devin, thank you so much for coming on Autonomy Signals, gentlemen. And the big question I want to leave you with, where's the next journey? Where are you trying to go all the way next? Are you going to go to Africa? Are we going to go to Asia? Where are you gentlemen going? Where are you taking the band?
I think we talked all over. I think like our dream destination is doing China, for sure. I think that would just be a thrill of a lifetime, and quite the drive. We just had the recent turn on in New Zealand and Australia of FSD version 14. So we the three of us have talked about that. And why we're here and wrapping things up. I want to thank you again, Devin, for coming up with us the idea and giving us the this fantastic, memorable week for a lifetime. Thank you again for somehow dropping your Galapagos vacation to do that. But I think all three of us are not slowing down. You'll be hearing about us in one way, shape, or form in the future. There's so many more countries to tackle, so many more things to do. I have a challenge coming up soon. We're going to use FSD in a lot bigger way, so stay tuned for that. And we're having the time of our lives. We really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate our friendship, Grayson. Very nice to meet you, Rob. And we can't wait to show you guys what's next.
Awesome. I'll summarize it this way: keep on supervising until you do not have to supervise.
Billions and soon trillions in value will be created in the autonomy economy. By the time a trend becomes consensus, the alpha is already gone. The gap between uncovering signals and reading headlines is widening fast. When it's a headline, it's no longer a signal. Enter Autonomy AI. We decode signals before they move markets, giving you conviction in the autonomy economy. Autonomy AI. Your models, our intelligence. Visit AUTNMY.ai.